Why me? King David's getting stronger and stronger. His kingdom's getting better and better. And the kingdom that was Mephibosheth's is getting weaker and weaker. They're dying off. Any moment, someone could come knocking on the door. Mephibosheth, the king, King David, wants to see you. And at that moment, when the king wants to see you, that could only mean the end. Think of how they're brought up. Kill off everyone. That way the king has no problems. And that doesn't change. Think about, okay, let me give you, what was it, King Richard? Now I'm doing the Disney version here, okay? Where, what wasn't it, King John and King Richard, and one had to go away, and one was the evil king, right? And the evil king just wanted to get rid of everything. Didn't want the other king to come back because he wanted everything. Let's get rid of everything so that we can do what we want. That's the way it used to be. In verse 6, though, the knock comes on the door. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face, prostrated himself. Then David said, Mephibosheth? And he answered, Here is your servant. This is the point. He's in front of King David. He was called to the kingdom. He's there. He's brought before him. He can't walk to him. He's brought before him. And you talk about a chance of insecurity of what is going to happen. Right then and there is when Mephibosheth is thinking, okay, his next words are going to be, off with your head, down with the dagger, you're going to die, this is the end for you. That was what Mephibosheth could have been thinking. But instead, wrath and judgment didn't come over him. He didn't have to sit there and think for a moment, why me? Verse 7, so David said to him, now get this, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually. Instead of, you're going to die, instead of having this insecurity of like, this is the end, instead of that, you hear from the king, you are going to eat at my table continually. Not only that, but all. And if like I said, if we could go through all that King Saul had, all for how big the kingdom was, it is yours, Mephibosheth. I'm going to restore it to you. And now, of course, David's still the king, but he has stuff now. He has, and think about it, for a lame person to have stuff, that meant something. He was somebody, and people were going to look around and see that young man. Look how he has been blessed by King David. And so at this point in time, his insecurities can be gone because he is to be taken care of. Why? Because of Jonathan. And that's a whole nother sermon on how everything that you do counts for something. It might not count at this moment exactly for you, but it does count down the road. You have no idea how your kids and your grandchildren and your offspring or your household or your work or your schools, how they'll be affected because of you and the vow that you make with God. And so here he is in fear, and now he's restored. How does Mephibosheth respond? In verse 8 he says, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? He still has just an inkling of insecurity. He still has, I'm not really sure what's going on. Man, you're doing something, and I don't even know why. And so David, he just explains it out to him about the vow. He explains it out to him about what he has. And all of a sudden, what we are seeing is God's grace flow through King David into Mephibosheth. God's grace. And with God's grace, insecurities are wiped away. It's an awesome thought process. All of a sudden, because of what Jonathan did and the vow, and because of what King David did, but most of all, you almost have to step away from the story and realize it's all because of God. All because of God, on how our insecurities, how his insecurities were wiped away. Instead of a conditional love, because like Mephibosheth is lame, he's the outcast. King David had an unconditional love for him. Now think about it, because I was talking about how you touch the lives of so many people. There's a part of us, I just want to touch the life of my best friend, and that's it. I don't care about no one else. But when unconditional love comes in, it goes past the best friend. It's an unconditional love that we have to have that gives acceptance. Have you ever been disappointed by some of life's mishaps? Lost your job, lost family members, lost friends. Someone rejects you. You lose your purpose in life. You have fear. These little things bring on your insecurities. A lot of times we want to ignore it. Hope that it goes away. If we don't look at it, then I will no longer have that insecurity. Or better yet, I can hide my insecurity to where nobody knows. But I'll tell you what, God still sees your insecurities. God still sees the issues that you're going through that make you feel that small. God sees it all. And there might be a time where you're like, well, why me? I love God. I have Jesus in my heart. I ask him every day to guide and direct me. I might not hear him every day, or I might be distracted every day, but I still do it. So why me, God? Why is this my way? In verse 11, then Ziba said to the king, according to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so will your servant do. As Mephibosheth said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons. Instead of looking at the why me, look at the fact that you get the opportunity to eat at God's table. Like you were his son, like you were his daughter. Your insecurities can be released because you are with the king. Jesus died so that your insecurities could be gone. Jesus died so that your sins could be forgiven. Jesus did it because of an unconditional love. Because I'll tell you what, if he was to look at us and some of the things that we do and some of the thought processes that we have with our insecurities, he could have said, you just look lame. And I don't mean like lame now, like nowadays. I mean, you look lame and you look like an outcast, and therefore that's what you will be. Instead, he said, because of my unconditional love, I will die for you so that you can be forgiven. You just have to get away from your insecurities and ask me to guide and direct and truly listen. That means sometimes we might have to take a few minutes and be quiet. And then when you're sitting there and you're still thinking, well, God's still not answering, maybe you need to open up your eyes and pray with your eyes open and look to see. Maybe God has something right in front of you. Maybe God has a King David right in front of you saying, you will eat at my table, which is God's table. An unconditional love. Have you ever had times where you misjudged people? Misjudge them because you didn't look at the whole story. In our video clip, the father never, ever saw the whole story. When the grandfather sat there and said, you know what? You know why he doesn't mow his lawn? Well, first of all, he is a renter. And the landlord said he would take care of the lawn. So if the lawn ain't mowed, it's not his fault. It's the landlord's fault. And not only that, he has taken all of his money and he is helping his uncle, who the father thinks unconditional love, that he is an outcast. He has taken all his money to help his uncle, to help the brother, is who it was. And so, in this sense, we have the father not seeing the whole story. In fact, after he heard the whole story, he still had an unconditional love. It wasn't good enough. He should have still mowed the lawn. The question is, though, do we not look at the whole story of individuals that surround us? There is a story that you will never know unless you connect and ask. Maybe you are King David. Maybe you're the godly person that is in someone else's life who is the outcast. You have to look at the whole story.